Next paragraph for picking apart Miss Melly Germany's ridiculous comments against me. So where were we? Oh, here we go. At the top. I disagree with your assertion that self-exploration is simultaneously a quest for self-improvement and perfection. How did you come to that conclusion? Well, let's think about it for a minute. What kicks off our self-exploration? And don't think about it in terms of, adults reading self-help books. Let's boil it down to its most bare, basic foundations. Let's boil it down to things, that most people do, that we do as children. So, for example, learning to tie our shoes. Something like that. Or I could give the example, if you want me to give a personal example. As a visual artist, and this is not necessarily as a little kid, but this is as early teens. I realized one day, more like it, to be perfectly honest, was pointed out to me one day, that when I would draw figure studies, when I would do figure studies, draw human beings or people, figures, maybe animated figures even, I would do a pretty good job of, almost an exact replica type job of drawing the body, the torso, the legs, the arms, the breasts, so on and so forth. But I wouldn't do a good job of drawing the hands or the eyes, or sometimes I would avoid drawing those altogether, or I would draw them in a way that I had already sort of learned to draw them. So, for example, I did a figure study once. I drew a figure study of an actual real-life human woman, but I drew her eyes to look a little bit more like anime eyes, because I already knew how to draw anime eyes, because I had practiced drawing anime for years and years at that point. So I had to come to the realization that I was not good at drawing hands or eyes because I hadn't practiced actually observing actual real hands and eyes. And then I had to come to, go even further to come to another realization that I hadn't practiced that enough because I was afraid to tackle drawing those things. A piece of me was scared, actually, to draw hands and eyes, because I didn't want to mess up at it. Why do we learn to tie our shoes? Usually because we want the freedom of being able to tie our own shoes. We want to feel like a big boy or girl, like an adult. We want to be able to do what everyone else can do. So anyway, the point I'm making is it's improvement. Usually when we reflect upon ourselves and our shortcomings and self-explore, quite often we come to certain conclusions like, oh, I'm bad at doing this or that, for whatever reason. And then, not always, but typically, a person is then inspired to come up with ways to do better at whatever it is they are, failing to do properly. Now, that implies wanting to improve. That implies improvement. And the far tail end of that, the end of that spectrum, the inevitable conclusion of, improvement is perfection, for the sake of perfection. Why else would somebody continuously try to improve themselves? So while I don't think that it's not always the reason why we self-explore, particularly not as we get older. There could be other reasons. I think that the most bare basic, what's the word I'm looking for, drive behind our quest for self-exploration, for breaking down and understanding, what we're doing wrong, it's usually to understand, how we can do better. And again, that implies a quest for perfection in the long run. Improvement, a desire for improvement implies an overarching desire for eventual perfection. So, let's continue real quick. Why do you think self-exploration reveals a person's imperfections? And why do you think everybody would feel the need to improve on these imperfections? Well, because you're not really exploring yourself if you're not stumbling upon an imperfection or two here and there, right? Nobody's perfect. So we're all fraught with imperfections and shortcomings. And so if you're not discovering fairly regularly that you have shortcomings and imperfections, then you're not really exploring yourself, are you? Or you're really only doing kind of a one-sided exploration. You're just acknowledging the things that you're really, really good at and patting yourself on the back. And that's not how anyone gets better at anything. And typically, again, if you want, I'll try to break it down more psychologically and give you some more explanations and examples, but I don't feel like I should have to. You should really be able to look inside yourself and look at human nature and understand that it's kind of built into us to want to improve. Even if we're not capable of it, even if other things are hindering us from doing it, like, I don't know, addiction, depression, so on and so forth, a feeling of hopelessness, overall, we typically still do want to improve. Even if we're doing very poorly at it. And in fact, it's been my experience that tends to add to, if not add, then just bring about a certain kind of depression when we can't improve when we want to improve. People who, engage in quote unquote self-exploration, but don't acknowledge any shortcomings are, again, they're really not engaging in any kind of real self-exploration. It's sort of a more narcissistic self-exploration. Again, it's, just, I'm really good at this. I'm really good at that. I'm really good at these things. But they're not acknowledging anything that they're bad at. That's, I want to say sad. That's really sad. Even if there's nothing they can do about it, at the very least, they should be able to acknowledge, like, okay, I can't do this. Like, nothing I can do. So, for example, I can't lift the same amount of weights that your average male can lift. I just don't have the muscle mass as a male that's, that's my age, in my age range. I just don't have it. I'm wouldn't be capable of it under typical circumstances. So I would have to acknowledge that. I that's something that, in fact, most women who living in reality have to live with every day. Like, in a fair fight, hand-to-hand combat up against a male, one of our male counterparts that is roughly the same age, weight class, so on and so forth as us, we would almost certainly lose, because they're just built differently than we are. They have more muscle mass than we do. And so it would not behoove us to enter into any kind of hand-to-hand combat with a dude that's our age range. That's that's acknowledging a shortcoming. And and there's really nothing you can do about it, short of, I don't know, taking steroids and going to the gym 23 hours a day. And I think most women wouldn't want to do that. And, she hulking up, and that's just, no, thank you. So some things, some shortcomings, you will have to just kind of concede, like, there's nothing I can do about that. Or you could come to the conclusion, eventually, if you want to get super philosophical about it, that, well, maybe it's not so much of a shortcoming as it is a trade-off. He's better at hand-to-hand combat, but I'm better at this and this and that. I'm better at psychology and, understanding my emotions and so on and so forth. And expressing my emotions. If you really can't understand how one of the most bare, basic, fundamental drives for self-exploration is the subconscious quest for perfection, it's like, I don't know what to do about you. There's nothing I can do to help you, dude. I'm trying here. I'm giving you what I can, without sacrificing too much of my day trying to think up ways to explain it to you. But just sit down and think about it for a little while. A lot of the reason why we self-explore, why we try to understand ourselves, our strengths, our shortcomings, basically just who we are as a person, a lot of that comes from a quest for improvement, which by extension implies a quest for eventual perfection. And I guess you're right in a way. Like, I think that as we get older, we might start to philosophize a bit more and come to certain conclusions. Like, I think just gave the example that, we can't or shouldn't don't want to improve on some of our imperfections. But that doesn't mean that the drive for self-exploration and self-understanding isn't based in perfection. We may come to the conclusion that, I don't want to improve upon this shortcoming that I just discovered about myself. We might come to that conclusion, but that doesn't mean that we initially didn't want to be able to improve upon it. So, let me see. What's the rest here? Are you aware that research consistently shows that it is actually more men than women? It's supposed to be then, THAN, not THEN. More men than, and not then, than women who want to have children. No, I wasn't aware of that. I Googled it. Let's have a look. So I Googled it real quick, and it looks like Google agrees with you. At least as of 2023, Google agrees with you. But let's have a look here real quick. There's more here. So it says, according to a 2023 Pew Research Center survey, men are more likely than women to want children. Men, 57% of men without children say they want to have children one day. Women, 45% of women without children say they want to have children one day. So looks like men want children more as of this particular survey, this one survey conducted in 2023. But there's more here. Let's see what Google has to say. The survey also found that 21% of women said they don't ever want to be parents, compared to 15% of men. Well, wait. There's a however. However, Psychology Today notes that there is a qualitative difference between wanting to be a parent and being emotionally invested in the work of raising children. Some reasons why men might not be emotionally invested in parenting include establishing a legacy. Some men describe wanting to become a father as a way to establish their personal legacy. So you see, some things that you're not taking into consideration is that there might be a lot more men out there wanting to have children because, well, A, they are not taking into consideration the full burden and responsibility involved in raising children, and or they have no intention of really putting in a lot of effort into the rearing of their children. They are of a mind that women should be the primary caregivers for their own children. I don't disagree with that, but they should at the very least be paying the bills, paying all the bills. You know, if you want a woman to raise your kids, be at home raising your kids all day, you need to be paying all the bills. A lot of dudes don't even want to do that. So a lot of dudes, like, they just want to have kids, but they don't want to put in any of the work or the effort. They're not calculating that a woman raising their children, being a homemaker, is doing way more work than they are doing working a 9-to-5 job. I wager that the women out there are calculating that. They're going like, okay, so if I have babies, I'm going to be doing way more work than he does. And in this day and age, at this stage of the game, and really for like, I don't know, maybe 1,000, 2,000 years or so or more, I probably won't get really any credit for it. He's going to get all the credit. They'll be known as his children. They'll have his last name, even though I really did all the work, or, like at least 75 to 80% of the work. He paid the bills. He'd have to pay bills for himself anyway, but whatever. And so a lot of women out there are calculating, like, if I'm going to have to do most of the work, I'm going to wear myself out. I'm going to age myself. I'm going to lessen my value on the romantic sexual market, so on and so forth. But he's going to get all the credit and he's going to walk away with the prize. Well, then why should I want to? Oh, and also he'll be the guy, he'll be the one bringing in the money. It will be considered all his money. He'll be in control of the money, which is unfortunately the way it is in a lot of these families. I don't agree with that. I think that the money should be split evenly between the mother and the father, regardless of who makes it, after, all the necessities are paid for. Anyway, so it makes sense that a lot of women out there wouldn't want children compared to men, when you consider that a lot of men out there probably aren't considering everything involved in all the details involved in rearing a child. They're just thinking about the big picture, like, yeah, I want to pass down my genetics and the family name. I want a son. I want a carbon copy of myself. But also another point that I would like to make here is, again, this is for 2023. This is one survey for a certain period of time, even if it's for like 5 surveys, even if the data comes from several different surveys, it's for a certain period of time. It's for the current period of time. This has not necessarily always been the case. All right. It might have been very different 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. I'm sure we've had pockets of time where these statistics have flipped back and forth. I'm sure that these statistics have flipped back and forth over and over and over again throughout the history of mankind based on the current climate. So, social climate. What's your point? You're not making great arguments here. That's what I'm trying to get at. But you're just going like, statistics show that men want children more than women. It's like, oh, okay, what statistics? Oh, one survey, and it's a current survey. It does not encompass all of the history of mankind, and it's just ridiculous. Anyway, but yeah, circling back to, let's just get back to this real quick. I disagree with your assertion that self-exploration is simultaneously a quest for self-improvement and perfection. Yes, it is. It just is. People, like, think about it. Here's another way of thinking about it. People are less likely to go looking for their flaws. So, I don't know. It's just, like, people, why, so maybe, I'm trying to think of a better way to word this. If somebody were perfect, why would they self-explore? Why would they try to know themselves better if they were perfect? Just saying, what, they wouldn't have a reason to. They would just do everything perfectly. Everything they say would be perfect, on the money. Everything they do would just be perfect, spot on. They would never make a mistake. What would be the motive for self-exploration if it wasn't to figure out, like, okay, how am I failing here? How am I doing worse than that guy or this guy or that chick? Because I want to be as good as they are. I want to be like them. I want to be better than them. Or at the very least, like, I want to live up to some ideal of myself that I have in my mind. And I'm not quite living up to that. So why is that? You understand? Like, that's very much, if it's not the most basic drive behind self-exploration, then it's at least one of the biggest drives behind self-exploration. We might develop different other, like, more reasons for self-exploration later on in life. But again, like, if you boil it down to its most bare basic, the bones, the foundation, the basic drive and motive, it's for eventual perfection. Even if you come to, again, if you become philosophical about it and go like, well, I'll never be perfect, so I should just learn to embrace and love my shortcomings and my imperfections and blah, 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 blah. Well, you wouldn't have gotten to the realization that you had that imperfection or that shortcoming if it weren't for the drive of I want to be better. I want to improve. You understand? Like, people aren't going around going like, I want to be worse. I want to be the shittiest I can be at this. Like I know that I am excellent. Here we go. Here's a great example. I know that I am an excellent. I am beautiful. I was born blonde, and I'm just. This is not me, but I'm thinking of, like, just think of your typical, I don't know, supermodel. I was born blonde and petite and big, beautiful eyes, blue eyes, whatever, and luscious lips and fair skin and little hands and feet and tiny little waist, but I want to be uglier. How can I be uglier? So I've acknowledged and determined one of my perfections, one of my strengths. I am naturally beautiful, but now I want to be uglier. How can I be ugly? Do you understand? Like, people do not typically, the drive or the motive behind self-exploration is not typically because they want to be worse. It's because they want to improve. Yeah. I guess, like, if you could maybe make the argument that people self-explore just because they want to know themselves for the sake of knowing themselves, but I don't think that that's the case in our earliest years as little children. Usually we begin exploring, trying to understand ourselves because we want to do better at things. So self-exploration for the sake of just knowing yourself, regardless of your perfections or imperfections, that would be probably a more adult thing. So you should probably understand that a lot of times when I talk about things, I'm talking about absolutes. I'm thinking in terms of absolutes, and I'm talking in terms of absolutes. And so I tend to boil things down to, the most bare basic, like, what drives us fundamentally. And a lot of times, if you want to figure that out, you just have to explore, why we start doing things as children. But whatever. Anyway, yeah. So that's that particular paragraph right there. I'm gonna end it here. End this video here.